Hey everyone, and welcome back to Chessbox Worldwide. Today we are diving into a thrilling encounter from the 2024 Norway Chess tournament where the young Indian sensation Praggnanandhaa took on none other than the world champion Magnus Carlsen, a game packed with aggressive play and decisive tactics. This was a battle for ages, a true clash of generations, as the young Indian prodigy Praggnanandhaa faced off against the undisputed GOAT, greatest of all time, former world chess champion Magnus Carlsen in round 3. Praggnanandhaa, often known as Pragg, is an Indian chess prodigy who achieved the title of Grandmaster at a remarkably young age, becoming the 5th youngest in history. Let's break down this absolute masterclass from Pragg against Magnus Carlsen at Norway Chess. In the white pieces, Pragg opened the game with e4 and Magnus Carlsen played c5, the Sicilian defense. Knight f3, e6 from Magnus Carlsen, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4. Support the f4 push in the future. a6, and now we see bishop d3, queen c7, short castling by Pragg, and after knight f6, Pragg played queen e2, d6. Since Pragg wanted to take control of the center, he played c4, knight bd7, planning to bring the knight to sit on e5 to attack pawn c4 and the bishop which is on d3. Praggnanandhaa went on to develop another piece. He played knight c3, and after knight e5, he played h3, stopping any knight jumps and taking control of the g4 square. b6, planning to develop the bishop to sit on b7 and take control of the diagonal. And boom, Praggnanandhaa went on and played f4, hitting on the knight which is on e5, and after knight takes d3, queen takes d3. In this position, Magnus played bishop b7. Pragg went on aggressively and played f5, trying to open up lines and also putting pressure on Magnus Carlsen. Magnus went on and played queen d7, but however, e5 should have been considered. And for example, in case of knight c2, we could have seen b5. Now in this position, Magnus doesn't sacrifice the pawn, but it's a tactical move. For example, in case of c takes b5, then we could see a takes b5. And in case of queen takes b5, we see queen d7. And after queen goes back to d3 to defend, now in this position, bishop s6 will be a final blow. Let's go back. After f5, Magnus went on and played queen d7, and now we see bishop g5. After bishop e7, rook c8, finishing up with the development, queen e2, e5. Pragg went on and played bishop takes f6. In case of the simple knight c2, this blunders almost the game. For example, after queen c7, now the pawn which is on c4 is being attacked, and also the pawn which is on e4 is also being attacked. In case of knight e3, the pawn which is sitting on e4 is under immense pressure. Let's go back. So after e4, Pragg played bishop takes f6, and after bishop takes f6, he played knight c2. Queen c6, we see that now the queen is putting pressure on both pawns, the pawn on c4 and the pawn which is on e4. Knight e3, defending the pawn and also trying to secure the d5 square for the knight. Bishop g5, attacking the knight which is on e3. And in this position, Praggnanandhaa played a prophylactic move. He played king h1. In case white tried knight e5, we could see queen takes c4, and after queen g4, f6, and after h4, this at least would give Praggnanandhaa a huge advantage. Let's go back. After bishop g5, he played king h1, a prophylactic move. Bishop takes e3, removing the defender. Queen takes e3, and now the pawn which is on c4 is hanging. But however, Black went on and played f6, a very powerful and active move. For example, in case of queen takes c4, this gives white a huge advantage. Praggnanandhaa would go on and play f6, and in case of g6, queen takes b6, and now we can see that queen attacking the bishop on b7, the pawn which is on d6 is hanging. After queen takes e3, Magnus played f6, and now we see b3, defending the pawn on c4. b5 centralized the knight, giving up the pawn because the pawn on c4 has no way of being defended. So he went on and centralized the knight. He played knight d5, giving up the pawn. And in this position, Magnus Carlsen first of all played Queen comes in c5, requesting for an exchange. In case Praggnanandhaa exchanges the queens, then this gives black more fighting chances. Praggnanandhaa declines the queen exchange. He played queen f3. The decisive blow is going to begin. Magnus went on and took the pawn. Pawn takes c4, and after queen h5 check, king goes to f8, forcing him not to castle. And in this position, he played rook f3, trying to bring the rook into the party, stopping also the aggressive c3, because now we see that the pawn can be pushed to c3. The rook is watching the c3 square, supported by the knight which is sitting on d5, and also swinging the rook to sit on d3 to put more pressure on g7. In this position, Magnus first of all took the knight, and after rook takes, attacking the queen, queen b6, and we see pawn takes c4, rook takes c4, attacking the pawn which is on e4. In this position, Pragg first of all played rook b3. Queen c7 should have been considered, but he played rook b4. And in this position, Pragg first of all played rook d3, supporting the rook. Rook b5 should have been considered, but he played rook takes b3. And Pragg played rook b3. Now we said the rook has secured the open file, and the queen is also putting an eye on the king. So we see queen c7, putting an eye on the b8 square. And in this position, Pragg first of all played another powerful move. Pragg played queen d1, bring the queen into action. Now the queen is going to sit on b1, support the rook which is on b3, and check the king on b8. When the queen is eyeing the d5 square, support the rook to sit on b7 and pin the queen against the king. So we see g6 trying to open up for the king, queen b1, and now queen c5. In this position, queen c4 should have been considered. For example, after queen c4, we could see rook b4, queen c3, rook goes to b7, rook g8, rook takes h7, queen c8, king h2, moving away from all the potential checks, and after rook g7, rook h8, rook g8, rook h6. At least this would give Magnus a playable game. But however, after queen b1, he played queen c5, and this gave Praggnanandhaa another decisive move. He played rook b7, cutting off the king and also attacking the pawn which is on h7. G takes f5, and we see king h2, which was a prophylactic move, moving the king from all the potential checks which could arise. And in this position, queen c8 should have been played, giving up the queen, which is be followed by rook b8, giving up the queen and also trying to fight on in the game. But Magnus Carlsen played rook g8, and this blundered the whole game. Praggnanandhaa first of all played queen b3, threatening checkmate in one, and this position to d5. After rook takes h7, Magnus Carlsen resigned the game because he was seeing another threat which could emerge from this position. For example, rook g7, followed by queen b8 check, king f7, queen b7 check. In case of queen coming into e8, then this could lose a queen, or this could lose a piece. For example, after rook takes rook, king takes rook, queen takes queen, and this would be checkmate in 7. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of this incredible game in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting chess content. Until next time, happy chessing. Thank you so much.